Good afternoon. It's September 13th, 2020, and this is episode 13 of Rob Explains, your daily podcast discussing and explaining cool, random, and interesting things. I'm Rob. Thanks for joining me. So for today, we're going to wrap up our severe weather set of topics with something maybe even more terrifying than what we've talked about previously, but luckily it will not impact most of you. Well, maybe not some of you. Imagine if I added the precipitation of a hurricane to the winds of a derecho or a tornado and gave it the power of a storm after the Fujiwara effect, and now you will have the possibility that you might freeze to death. Then you'd have a blizzard. For those in the Northeast, blizzards are a regular part of life. They seem to occur every 5 years or so. Generally speaking, yearly, many parts of the United States get snow, but blizzards are a special type of snowstorm. Generally speaking, it must have winds of 35 miles an hour sustained and less than 1/4 mile visibility for it technically to be a blizzard. Now, you'll remember from the hurricane episode that essentially makes it a tropical depression matched with snow. Well, funny enough, most blizzards actually come out of another type of weather called a nor'easter. And a nor'easter is a tropical storm. That means it has originated down in the tropical area, the tropical regions of the world, and it moves up the east coast of the United States. Because it's a low pressure tropical storm, the winds are moving counterclockwise in its own organization. Meaning, if you can imagine the clock in front of you, they are moving from right to left. As it reaches the northeast United States, the weather is much colder there. So rather than getting rain like you would in a hurricane, you're now going to get sleet, hail, and snow. Because the sleet, hail, and snow and the winds are coming from the northeast direction, again, the counterclockwise turn of the storm, we call it a nor'easter or northeaster. In recent years, the growing strength of these tropical storms has meant even stronger blizzard conditions for those living in the Northeast. Superstorm Sandy was in fact one of these tropical storms that made its way up the East Coast, took on winter-level conditions, and then bombarded the Northeast with these conditions. The most devastating part of these storms is that unlike a hurricane, which tends to move fast, because they move up the East Coast, they can sometimes park over an area or move very slowly. So they can actually dump inch after inch after inch of snow on the same area. And because some of the storm or most of the storm may remain over water, it continues to build strength and keep strength. Unlike a hurricane that, once it makes landfall, immediately starts to weaken once it leaves the water. Now, technically speaking, you don't need to have a nor'easter to have a blizzard. Oftentimes, and those in upstate New York will know, the power of the Great Lakes is all you need to form blizzard conditions. A strong storm moving across the Great Lakes area can gather enough moisture and enough energy from the Great Lakes to dump blizzard-like conditions into upstate New York. Unfortunately, Rochester, New York, has the delegation of the most blizzard-hit city in the United States because it can be hit both by northeasters and by Great Lakes storm. Although a blizzard starts to be delegated at 35 miles per hour wind, it can go up from there. In fact, there was a storm in 1993 that had hurricane force winds. And of course, Superstorm Sandy had tropical storm force winds to match with its snow, hail, and sleet. Just like a hurricane, the best advice is to stay inside, and even more so. While you might get caught out in a hurricane and be injured by the winds or drown in rising surge or falling rainwater, in a blizzard you have the added risk of also hypothermia. Obviously, sleet, hail, and snow require at or below freezing conditions in order for the storm to dump that precipitation. So now you have winds hitting your body in excess of 35 miles an hour and a cold wind on top of already cold temperatures, on top of falling cold precipitation, and it can be a very dangerous combination. And much like a hurricane, there is the risk of losing electricity. There is the risk of a storm surge that can be even more pressing in the winter months. For those of you listening on the West Coast, you may never experience blizzard-like conditions as they're just not common here temperatures don't fall low enough, and the right conditions don't arise. But don't worry, we'll get to you soon enough. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Rob Explains. Look for new episodes daily wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. Find us online on all social media at Rob Explains. Got a comment, question, or query? Or did I get something wrong and you want to correct me? Shoot me an email, rob@robexplains.com, or you can leave a comment down below. I'll check those right after the show goes live. And you can send me a message, anchor.fm/RobExplains/message. And in the form of a voicemail, I can actually include it in a future episode. Once again, thank you for joining me. Until next time, this is Rob. Take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great day.